Hi, I'm Cliff, and this is my garage. And this is my almost brand new Kubota Z421 zero-turn riding mower. It's got 8 hours on the meter, so it's time for its first oil change. Hey, welcome back to the garage. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for dropping by. First off, a big thank you to all of my 1,005 subscribers. That's right, after a year and a half, we've broken over the 1,000 subscriber mark. I'm so excited about that. I'm so grateful to all of you that have subscribed and pushed me past this mark. At 1,000 subscribers, YouTube decides, okay, you're legit. We'll let you start making some money off your videos. Now, I don't expect to make any kind of serious money. I figure it's going to be like 10 bucks a month, but that was never the point of doing this channel. I've always done it just because I love teaching, I love sharing, and I just want to say thank you for letting me do this. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I'd really appreciate it if you'd go down there and click on that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a penny. It feeds YouTube's algorithm and helps us get recommended more in search results here on YouTube. Another thing that really feeds that algorithm is likes. So please go down there, find that thumbs up button, give us a like on the video. And for those of you that are procrastinators, this little thing is going to pop up a couple times during the video just to remind you to go down there and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. So let's get started. Like with any brand new engine, there's a certain break-in period where all the parts don't quite fit together exactly perfectly, and there's some extra wear that happens as they kind of fit to each other, and that generates metal particles in the oil. So Kubota recommends that after just 8 hours, you do the first oil change on this engine just to get nice fresh oil in after that break-in period is finished. I've hit that 8-hour period, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that. Now, it doesn't say you should also change the oil filter, but I'm going to go ahead and take care of that anyway so that I can show you the entire process rather than coming back later on in the year and showing you a full oil change. We'll just go ahead and do it now. Now, if we're going to drain the oil out of the engine, we need some place to put it. And I like this catch pan here. It's just molded plastic, and it has a hole in the top where the oil can drain into. You just put it underneath where the oil drain is. It has a nice little ridge here where you can set the filter and let it drain also. And when you're all done, you just kind of clean the top, and then you take this cap off here and you can pour it into a container to take to your local used oil disposal center. Now, most auto parts stores will take used oil, so usually that's the easiest option. Just give them a call and make sure that they do that. If we're going to drain all the oil out of the engine, well, we better have some to put back in. Now, this can be a point of contention among people. Some folks have a very strong opinion about what kind of oil you should use in an engine. Now, in my case, I have come to really like this Liqui full synthetic oil, and I've started using it in all my engines. Now, I know some of you will say, well, wait a minute, why not just use a cheap oil like Amazon Basics? Such and such YouTube channel showed that it's just as good, if not better. I'm not saying that's not true, but we purchase like 500 or 600 items a year off of Amazon, and we buy a lot of Amazon Basic stuff. And what I've seen in those things is they're adequate, they work, they have noticeably lower quality levels in things that may not matter, but overall, they're good basic things. Now, when it comes to the oil in my engine, that's someplace that I'm not comfortable putting something that's adequate. I want to spend a little more money and feel a little more comfortable about it. I'll admit, maybe I'm wasting money. But in the case of a lawnmower like this, I'm wasting a few dollars a year, and I don't think that's that big a deal. And for the peace of mind that I personally get from buying a high quality synthetic oil like this, I'm willing to take the chance that I'm wasting a few dollars a year. So we're going to go with this. You go with what you like. Another debate is synthetic versus conventional oil. I'm on the side of synthetic, especially in an application like this where you're dealing with heat. This is an air-cooled engine. It tends to operate outdoors in very hot times of the year, and synthetic resistance to heat breakdown is where its real strength is at. So in this application, I'm absolutely 100% I'm going with synthetic. As I said before, we don't really need to change the oil filter this time around. We don't need to actually change it until 100 hours of use. But just for the sake of doing it and showing it to you guys, I'm going to go ahead and change the oil filter today. Again, we're talking, what is it, about $12 for a new filter. So I'm willing to sacrifice my $12 just for you guys. Now, one problem I had was figuring out what oil filter to get. It's not in the owner's manual for the riding mower because you can have different engines in different models of Kubota riding mowers, zero-turn mowers. And so I had to try and dig it out of the specs for the engine itself, which I found a couple conflicting specs. Apparently, there is an old serial number, an old part number for the oil filters versus a new part number. I finally had to resort to looking at the oil filter that was on the engine already. And, you know, it does have a label with the part number. Unfortunately, that label was turned towards the engine block. And so I ended up having to like work my finger in there and just kind of work my way around next to the engine block and peel off the old label, which is how I finally got the correct part number. And I'm going to put the part number right here somewhere on the screen. And I'll also give you a link to an Amazon listing that you can buy it directly. That'll be down in the video description below the video. So if we're going to change the oil filter, we got to get the old one off. And to do that, I'm going to use my very favorite oil filter wrench in the world. This three-pronged or three-tooth geared gizmo that you've seen in a couple other of my videos. And this thing is awesome. What it is that you put it onto the filter and you turn, and these little arms, teeth, whatever you want to call them, they clamp down, or they close in and they clamp down and grab onto the filter and turn it off so very easily. It works better than any other oil filter wrench I've ever tried. And it's also universal. Well, I guess if you had a really humongous oil filter or a really tiny one, it wouldn't work. But it's worked on everyone that I've tried. And if you've got a particularly stubborn oil filter, this just comes right off. It's a standard, what is that, 3/8 driver that it'll fit onto. So you can use an impact driver, or if you really got serious, you could use a pneumatic impact wrench. Either way, fantastic little tool. Again, look down in the description of the video below, and I'll give you a link to where I bought it off of Amazon. Okay, so we've got our catch pan, we've got our oil, we've got our oil filter, we've got our oil filter wrench. I think we're ready to get started. Now, the oil drain and the oil filter are located in a bit of a pain in the butt part. It's way up here at the front right-hand side of the engine, right next to the frame and everything. It's kind of an inconvenient location, but Kubota has done a couple things to make your life easier. I'm going to move the camera in and give you a lot better view of what's going on here. Okay, so we need to start off by finding this little valve here, and this is the drain valve. There's a little like knob here. It's actually hex shaped, so you could get hold of it with a wrench, and the oil is going to come out of this little thing right here and drop through this hole here into the catch pan that's on the floor underneath. Now, supposedly, I can turn this with my fingers, and let's see. I don't know about that. Nah, there is no way. So let's go find a socket that'll fit that. All right, no surprise, it's a 10 millimeter, so it fits. So Okay, now that I've loosened it up, probably turn it with my finger. Yep. There we go. That's a pretty slow flow. Yeah, if I pulled it out too much, it leaks oil out. Actually, I forgot to open up the, oh, look at that. Okay, I took the oil fill cap off, and the drain flow increased dramatically. While we're waiting for the oil to drain, we're going to go ahead and prep the new filter. And we're going to do it in a couple of different ways. One, we're going to preload the filter by pouring oil into it. I've poured some oil into this cup to make it easier. And you fill up the filter to the bottom of the threads. And then you let it sit there and let it soak into the filter media, the paper pleated filter inside. We also are going to take and rub some clean oil all over the O-ring there. And that has a couple different purposes. One, it lubricates it so that it slides on easier and makes a better seal. And two, it forms like a film between the rubber and the engine block to keep it from heat welding on there. Because I've seen it a couple of times where it was put on dry, and just over time, the heat literally bonds the rubber right onto the engine block. And that's a pain in the butt to get off. So just take and put a little oil on there, and that'll take care of that problem. Now, this thing with preloading the oil filter, where you put oil into it before you put it on, is something I had never seen or heard of until like 10 years ago. But I'm seeing more and more engine manufacturer manuals, the service manuals say, to go ahead and do this. It's a good idea. I'm not sure exactly the reasoning. It could be to keep an oil starvation situation from happening when you first started up and there's no oil to be pumped from the filter. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. Whatever it is, the manufacturer says to do it. I'm going to go ahead. It's no big deal. It is a little bit messier because it is going to come spilling out when I put the oil filter back on. Okay, the draining oil has slowed down to a slow drip. I'm going to go ahead and close up the valve there. I use the socket to put just a smidge of pressure on there. I don't want to do a whole bunch because this thing is still loose. This thing is entirely plastic. So tighten it all the way down my fingers, and I'm not feeling any resistance at all. I'm going to tighten this too much. I think that's tight enough. I'm not sure. There's literally no resistance whatsoever here. There, I got a little bit of resistance. We'll leave it there. That valve does leak a bit. So I'll just real quick clean that up. Our next step is to remove the oil filter, and this cable is just kind of in my way. I'm going to remove this connector, go into some kind of a sensor, I'm guessing, and this just pops right out of there. Stick it back out of our way here. Now, as soon as we pull this filter off, of course, oil is going to start running out of it because there's still oil trapped in the filter. And that's what this little, I don't know what you'd call that, this little thing poking out here. It catches the oil and lets it drain off into the drain hole. This is a lot like the oil filter on a Hummer H3. The oil filter mount is right over a suspension member, and that suspension member has one of these little plates with a lip around it, and its sole purpose is to catch the oil and drain it off in the right direction without making a huge mess. get in here with our oil filter wrench. Boy, this is so tight. Okay, and come on. There. Yeah, I would have had an extremely hard time getting that off just by hand. All right, we're all loosened up now. And we can do the rest of this. Should be able to do the rest of this with just our fingers. And you can see the oil starting to drain out and run off. I'll just let that sit there for a minute. Try to make as little mess as possible here. And you're spinning the filter off, and then turn it upright and take it out. Okay, refit this oil filter. It's pretty easy if you just kind of reach in here from the back of the engine through the, well, kind of the back side of the engine cover or enclosure. Now, the reason the oil filter stopped spinning at this point is because the rubber O-ring made contact with the engine block. And Kubota says that once that happens, you only turn it an additional 3/4 of a turn, and that's tight enough. Now, I forgot, in hand tightening it, I push it all the way around to like 1 1/4 turns, which I don't think is going to hurt anything. But technically, I should have stopped at 3/4 of a turn, and next time I'll try to remember to do that. Spin this on. And as always, you never go more than hand tight on these, on an oil filter. Whatever you can do by hand should be more than adequate. And let's get in here the paper towel and clean up all this spill of oil. According to the service manual, this engine takes 2.2 quarts. I'm going to put in about 2 and then check it. You can't find my good funnel, so I'm going to just use this this funnel off of a gas can. I've cleaned it up real good, and going the other way, a little bit, a tiny bit of oil in the gas or diesel is not going to hurt anything. I'm going to use the gauge that's on the side of the bottle. That's about 1 quart. Ooh, oh, went a little too fast. Overflowed the, yeah, not much. I lost maybe a tablespoon there. So slow it down some. Check how much I've put in. When I say overflow, I don't mean I put too much oil in. I mean I put it in too fast. Just pour some. Then I go back and I check the little gauge on the side of the can. Just kind of sneaking up on 2 quarts here. Whoa, did it again. Too fast. And if I did overfill it, it's easy enough with the way this thing is designed to drain it. So in that way, I do like it. I do like the design of that little valve on the side. It will be simple to drain it down. Okay, let's pull the funnel out and use the dipstick to check the oil level. Side. Now, as with any dipstick, you don't want to push it in and screw it all the way down or completely insert it. You just want to take and put it in and nestle it down on top of the threads. Don't screw it down because that messes up the measurement. Then we'll pull it back out and take a look here, and let's let that sit for a minute and settle in. We may have actually overfilled. Yep, we sure did. Or I sure did. You guys didn't do anything wrong. Gonna get a socket, and I'm gonna loosen that valve back up, drain some oil. As I said many videos ago, I'm not going to be one of those people that looks like they do everything perfectly and never make a mistake. When I screw up, I am definitely going to let you know, and make sure I've got the oil pan under there. Check again. Really didn't make much of a difference. I mean, I overshot by just a tiny amount. Check it. And there we go. Not sure how well you can see that, but it is right at the full mark where it's supposed to be. And we're good to go. Do a little more cleaning here before we completely button up. And got to remember to completely tighten up that drain valve also. Okay. Be paranoid. One last check. Yep. Again, I'm not sure if you can see it, but we are right at the top. Clean up. We're done. Well, that went pretty well, even considering my little mistake in overfilling the oil. That was really easy to correct. I really like this design of the drain that the Kubota, or actually Kawasaki, well, you know, now that I think about it, I'm not sure who's responsible for that particular drain. It could be that Kawasaki designed it that way, or that Kubota said, hey, we want you to put this kind of a drain on it. Either way, it's well thought out. I do kind of wish it was metal instead of plastic, but it seems to work fine. It made draining the oil really easy. It made adjusting the oil level really easy, and I appreciate that. I was kind of concerned about the oil gushing out sideways when you open up the drain, but the flow is so slow that it's really not a concern at all. So good job, Kubota or Kawasaki, whoever came up with this. Now, overall, the job was pretty straightforward and easy to do. I'd say that it would have taken me 5, maybe 10 minutes tops, plus the time to drain the oil, which if the engine were warm, it would have drained a lot faster. So if you have a warmed up engine, I'm guessing you could do it in as little as 10 minutes. One clarification on the supplies I'm using. Now, I'm using 5W40 oil, SAE 5W40, and that's based on the weather that we have here in Florida during the mowing season. When we're mowing, it's always in the 80s or 90s, even pushing up to 100 degrees. And based on that temperature, you have to look in the service manual or in the owner's manual, and it'll tell you, well, under these conditions, use this type of oil. And in our case, it said you need to use SAE 40 oil. So the 5W is really irrelevant. This could be 5W40, 10W40, 0W40. The W part doesn't matter. Now that, well, you know, let's not get into that. I think I'll do a separate video that explains what these numbers mean in an oil specification. In your area, you need to look at what your temperatures are like and look in the manual and find out what's the correct oil for you to use. Now, a couple of videos that I've seen have said, well, you really need to use Kawasaki brand oil because they've made the oil specifically right for their engines. Okay, this is really just not true. Kawasaki doesn't make oil. Kawasaki calls up an oil company and says, hey, we need 20,000 quarts of this type of oil, and go ahead, here's the logo designed to stick our label onto that oil. That's all it is. There's nothing special about that oil. As long as you put in an oil that meets the specifications that Kawasaki lays out in the owner's manual, you're gonna be fine. Now, there is this tendency to think, well, if I don't use Kawasaki oil or whatever it is, use the manufacturer's supplies, it'll avoid the warranty. I don't want to get into all the details of why that's not true, and I'll do that in another video one day, but it is not true. You do not have to use manufacturer supplies in order to maintain your warranty. Now, the same idea applies to the oil filter. I happened to buy a Kawasaki branded filter, but that's not because I was insisting on Kawasaki. It's just when I looked up the part number, that was one of the least expensive filters available. In fact, it's one of the only filters available. This particular filter is kind of hard to find, but the price wasn't outrageous, and so I went ahead and went with that. But if there had been a different filter that I felt was from a brand that I trusted and it was less expensive or it was more readily available, I would have gone with that. Again, Kawasaki, I'm pretty sure, does not actually manufacture their filters. They just lay out a specification. The manufacturer meets that specification, and as long as your oil filter meets that specification, then you're good to go. Okay, guys, let's wrap this up. We're all done. My wife wants to get this thing back so she can get out there and mowing. As always, thank you so much for liking, subscribing, and sharing my videos. I really do appreciate it. Now that we're over 1,000, let's start pushing towards 2,000 subscribers. I'm really excited to reach that milestone also. And when you do subscribe, go ahead and click on that little bell icon. That turns on YouTube's notification system, but only for this channel. What that does, and it doesn't cost anything, it just lets YouTube know that you want to be notified every time that I post new content from here in Cliff's Garage. I'll see you next time.